All right, so here we have big tech censorship of conservatives continuing to increase, and they're not really even trying to hide it at this point. So we'll take a look at some of the latest examples. So here we see Charlie Kirk, whether you agree with him or not, and he does have some viewpoints that I don't exactly agree with as well, but we can see here Turning Point USA President Charlie Kirk's Twitter account was locked on Saturday for a tweet about Pennsylvania ballots. Pennsylvania just rejected 372,000 mail-in ballots, Kirk tweeted. One voter was said to have submitted 11 duplicate ballots. Pennsylvania might be key to winning the White House. What's going on? Twitter said the post violated our rules against posting misleading information about voting, screenshots show. And while Kirk tweeted that over 300,000 ballots had been rejected, the state actually rejected 372,000 mail-in ballot applications, ProPublica reported on Friday. And of course, here you see the screenshot. A lot of people have probably seen this if Twitter's ever flagged you for anything they deem as violating their rules. First thing you need to do is delete it, and then they'll usually unlock you. Kurt criticized the lock, saying that big tech has become the enforcement and communication arm of the Biden campaign and the Democrat Party during an interview with Fox News host Steve Hilton, according to Fox News. I'm kind of in a hostage situation right now with Twitter, Kirk told Hilton. I do not have access to my Twitter account because I have tweeted a widely reported story 19 hours ago that changed a couple of hours later. Twitter declined to comment to the Daily Caller News Foundation. A spokesman for Kirk, Andrew Kovet, told the DCNF, far from spreading misinformation, Charlie was sharing widely reported information at the time, information that was only later updated by certain outlets hours later. In this instance, the original reporting by some outlets referenced 372,000 ballots had been rejected in Pennsylvania. This was later updated to 372,000 applications for ballots, he added. And Charlie was only made aware of the change when the account was locked out. So yes, the information ended up being incorrect later, but Charlie was reporting what was being widely reported at the time. So in this instance, instead of locking his account for misinformation, why not simply allow him to actually put out a correction stating something like, hey, the information I reported earlier has been updated. Here's the updated information. And even, allow him to delete the tweet if that's what they want. And he can still say, hey, I deleted the tweet from earlier. Information ended up being incorrect. It was updated. Here's the update. Next up, we have Dr. Scott Atlas. Here we see Twitter removes White House coronavirus task force members' tweet saying masks don't work. It says Dr. Scott Atlas, a member of the White House coronavirus task force, had one of his tweets removed by Twitter on Sunday. The tweet in question had Atlas claiming that face masks don't prevent the spread of coronavirus. Atlas, who is a neuroradiologist and healthcare policy expert, wrote on Saturday, masks work? No. LA, Miami, Hawaii, Alabama, France, Philippines, UK, Spain, Israel. Who? Widespread use not supported, plus many harms. Heading in OXF CEBM, despite decades, considerable uncertainty, read value. CDC in May, no significant, and I'm not sure what he's trying to say there. He uses a lot of abbreviations. Learn why. Atlas, who is a Hoover Institution senior fellow, also shared a link to an article in the American Institute for Economic Research that argues against the effectiveness of face masks against coronavirus. Atlas quote tweeted his original post with a follow-up post that read, that means the right policy is real Donald Trump's guidelines use masks for their intended purpose when close to others, especially high risk. Otherwise, social distance, no widespread mandates, #common sense. Twitter stated that the tweet violated the social media company's rules on disputed or misleading information. If we determine a tweet contains misleading or disputed information that could lead to harm, we may add a label to the content to provide context. Twitter's official blog from May defines misleading information as statements or as assertions that have been confirmed to be false or misleading by subject matter experts such as public health authorities. Atlas told Newsweek that he didn't understand why Twitter had deleted his tweet, which included abbreviated citations of multiple sources, some months old, on the effectiveness of widespread mask wearing. Twitter seems to be censoring the science as if it goes against their own goals of public indoctrination, Atlas said. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommends that people wear face masks to help reduce the spread of coronavirus. We are not defenseless against COVID-19, said CDC Director Dr. Robert R. Redfield. Cloth face coverings are one of the most powerful weapons we have to slow and stop the spread of the virus, particularly when used universally within a community setting. All Americans have a responsibility to protect themselves, their families, and their communities. The removal of Atlas posts comes a week after Twitter flagged one of President Donald Trump's tweets about COVID-19. Twitter censored the president because he declared that he is immune to COVID-19. Of course, the tweet read, "A total and complete sign-off from White House doctors yesterday." Trump wrote, "That means I can't get it, immune, and can't give it. Very nice to know." Obviously, we know he speaks in hyperbole. You can argue whether or not that's misinformation or just the way Trump talks. Twitter also locked the official account of the New York Post after the paper published an article that featured alleged emails from Hunter Biden regarding his reported overseas dealings. The New York Post Twitter account appeared to still be locked as of early Sunday afternoon. And previously, Atlas caused a stir in July when he told Glenn Beck, "There is zero science to back up claims that the schools should be closed or even open with any constraints whatsoever." Frankly, one of the most egregious failures of the policy people is not just allowing fear to infiltrate their own thinking and do lockdowns, which are severely harmful, Atlas told Beck, but secondly, they have failed to reassure the public about the facts and about the relative risk here. It's a very serious, dangerous disease for a group of people, and we know who those people are. They are high-risk, elderly people with comorbidities. Everyone else is not a high-risk disease. Again, you can argue which studies you believe, which studies you don't believe, but there are conflicting studies out there concerning coronavirus. Why not allow them all out there? People have as much information as possible from both sides of the argument, and they can make up their own minds and decide for themselves. What big tech seems to be doing here is censoring things that don't go with their opinion, and you can argue whether or not you agree with that. And of course, we could look at why do we think big tech is actually censoring one side of the story. It's because most of big techs they're Democrats, they're liberals. If you look here, Anna Makanju is not only Facebook's lead executive on election policy and former Joe Biden advisor on Ukraine, but she's also a recipient of a Soros fellowship. See here from the Gateway Pundit, we reported early Sunday that Facebook has been censoring conservative voices since 2017. The Gateway Pundit has been speaking out on this unconstitutional assault on freedom of speech and freedom of the press for years now. Back in September 2018, the Gateway Pundit's Young Hoft spoke to Congress on Facebook's assault on free speech. But Facebook's censorship against conservatives has only gotten worse over the years, and we can confirm that Facebook is ramping up their censorship against our publication significantly the last 3 weeks. An election is coming up. On Saturday, the conservative Treehouse broke the story that Facebook's lead executive of election policy is Joe Biden's former advisor to Ukraine, and Makanju works for Facebook today after advising the Biden crime family in Ukraine and Eastern Europe. They actually have a screenshot here. You can go to the article. Links will be in the description. Fool Nelson first reported this on Anna Makanju on Twitter, and they have links to his tweets here. And now this, of course, Fool Nelson also linking to the Biden email scandal. And now we can report that Anna Makanju is Facebook's executive in charge of public policy who leads efforts to ensure election integrity, a former Biden senior policy advisor for Ukraine. The person at Facebook who is no doubt involved in conveniently blocking the Hunter Biden email reports from spreading on Facebook is connected to corrupt whistleblower EC. I will not say his name because YouTube would probably ban me. From the Ukraine impeachment scam associated with the Atlantic Council. But she is also a fellow and recipient of the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowship for New Americans. Paul with the older brother Soros. So you see there, heavy connections from people higher up in charge of censorship at these social media companies. Heavy connections between them and Democrats and George Soros in some cases. And then finally we have a tweet here from a professor named Robert Reich, proposing a post-election commission to censor and blacklist Trump supporters, and leftists on Twitter are salivating over the idea. It says University of California, Berkeley professor and the former Secretary of Labor, Robert Reich, proposed a radical idea for a post-election commission to censor speech and name and shame every public figure who supported President Donald Trump's rise to power. He wrote on Twitter over the weekend that when this nightmare, or in his opinion, Trump's presidency, is over, we need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It would erase Trump's lies, comfort those who have been harmed by his hatefulness, and name every official, politician, executive, and media mogul whose greed and cowardice enabled this catastrophe. Read plainly, it appears Reich is envisioning a committee that would oversee a massive censorship campaign of things purported to be lies by the president and a massive blacklist campaign of Trump supporters. both of which sound like characteristics of a dictatorial transition of power that occur in third world countries. Here you can see his full tweet. When this nightmare is over, we need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and they've already quoted that in the article. And of course, we'll see some examples here of some of the responses from leftists on Twitter. So in response to the tweet, several Twitter followers agreed and even raised the stakes of his proposal. I am thinking more of using the post-war Nuremberg trials as a template, one Twitter user wrote, speculating that criminal trials should be in order. Felonies were committed as were treasonous behaviors. The guilty should be arrested, tried, convicted, and forced to do time. Prosecute them all, another said. The Justice Department will hire new attorneys. The media will be fed by the trials, and Biden and his administration can focus on policy and government reform. We are broken and need to be restructured so this can never happen again, or it's a lot harder to repeat. Another added Supreme Court packing and the abolition of the Electoral College to the Commission's list of to-dos in order to ensure that this can never happen again. Still another suggested the Commission be named the Truth and Consequences Commission and argued that at the very least there need to be a lot of people banned from government service for life, including all federal law enforcement officers who committed crimes or abused authorities because they thought the administration would cover for them. Someone else suggested the commission should review all of the federal judges that have been appointed by Trump and kick those out that aren't qualified. So much for the president's constitutional authority to appoint judges. In a subsequent responding to some Twitter users who rejected his proposal, Reich posted an article that laid out arguments for a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. As long as unresolved historic injustices continue to fester in the world, there will be a demand for truth commissions, the article stated. The goal of a truth commission is to hold public hearings to establish the scale and impact of a past injustice, typically involving wide-scale human rights abuses, and make it part of the permanent, unassailable public record. In the article, the author points to Canada's recent commission to address historic injustices perpetrated against Canada's Indigenous peoples, and South Africa's commission to address apartheid as models. So censorship continues. Unfortunately, the GOP likes to complain about the censorship, but they kind of lack the, shall we say, testicular fortitude to do anything about it. So it'll probably continue no matter who gets reelected or elected for the 2020. But that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. You have a good day. As usual, I'll include links to the articles in the description below. And you have a nice day.